Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Otherworldly Fiction. I'm Riley, and today I'll be discussing the 11 ways in which the Harry Potter universe parallels our own. Before we begin, this channel is focused on fantasy literature. I analyze books, offer reading tips, and dive into fantastical creatures and phenomena. If you want to hear more content like this, please subscribe. A written version of this can also be found in the description. As far as the wizarding world is concerned, there are more similarities between wizards and muggles than not. While fans were drawn to the strangeness of the world, it was its familiarity that made them stay. One of the shared passions between wizards and muggles is music. Muggles get the Beatles, while wizards get the Weird Sisters. Celestina Warbeck's Cauldron Full of Hot Steaming Love is also relatable to anyone who's ever swooned over a love song. If music can't unite muggles and wizards, then sports can. Vancouver Muggles lost it when the Canucks, a hockey team, lost to Boston. There were riots, showcasing how incensed people can become. It's no different for wizards when it comes to Quidditch. Hexes in the halls of Hogwarts against opposing houses become common practice when students are anticipating a Quidditch match. And who else remembers that disastrous moment when Ron nearly destroys Harry's chances with Cho because she supports the Tornadoes? Wizard or Muggle, sports can make us irrational. Yet another parallel between Muggles and wizard kind lies in our hosting a global sporting event. The Muggles have the Olympics, while the Wizards have the Quidditch World Cup. Both events encourage cooperation between different countries. The most talented athletes can even become beloved by supporters of other teams. Muggle countries the world over learn to love Usain Bolt. Likewise, wizards of all nationalities cheered for Victor Crumb. Sadly, yet another similarity between wizards and muggles is the wealth gap. Ron is pureblood, but his status is nevertheless impacted by his family's lack of money. Forced to endure jibes about his family sharing one room or going hungry to provide him with school books, Ron's struggles are only too relatable for those muggle kids who go without. Ron's poverty isn't severe, but it impacts his confidence when he can't afford the extras his classmates take for granted. If wealth gaps are shared among both wizards and muggles, so is the need to own the latest and greatest piece of tech. Ron's inability to afford the Nimbus 2000, which becomes almost a status symbol, is relatable to muggles who can't afford the Xbox One or the Nintendo Switch. Like game consoles, brooms also seem to go obsolete quickly. Only a year later, the Nimbus 2001 came out, which sounds similar to the upgraded versions of the Xbox and the PlayStation we often get. Inept governments are yet another problem shared by muggles and wizards. When the Minister for Magic, Cornelius Fudge, hears that Voldemort has returned, his first response is to ignore the problem and proclaim that it will just go away. Likewise, Donald Trump denies the existence of the coronavirus, a decision that has led to unnecessary fatalities. Fudge and Trump even ignore the evidence, treating mounting death tolls as coincidental. Dated policies are also shared by wizard and muggle governments. Just as minority groups in the Muggle world, such as different races or those who are gender non-conforming, lack laws to protect them, so too do races in the wizarding world. Goblins, house elves, and centaurs have few protections in place. Perhaps more startling is the proclivity of both Muggles and wizards to fall for dangerous ideologies. Voldemort and his Death Eaters promote the pureblood agenda, just as Hitler and his Nazis promoted the idea of the Aryan race. Voldemort and Hitler share something else. Neither belonged to the group which they promoted. Hitler wasn't blonde or blue-eyed. Voldemort wasn't pureblood himself, though his Death Eaters could only express rage when Harry mentioned in passing that their leader was half-blood. The wizarding world also shares racial tensions with the Muggle world. While they seem accepting towards their fellow wizards, allowing the Black Kingsley to become Minister for Magic, they nevertheless discriminate. Goblins, house elves, and centaurs are the downtrodden of the wizarding world. They can't hold jobs beyond their assigned roles, they seldom own shops or titles, and are never permitted to have a voice in the government. Wizards also struggle to understand the culture of those such as the goblin. For goblins, ownership of an item is determined by who has made it rather than who buys it. Such differences in thinking lead to misunderstandings, with few wizards bothering to understand the perspective of the other. Wizards and Muggles also share other problems with discrimination based on what they are instead of who they are. In the Muggle world, you might be black, transgender, white, straight, disabled. There are no end to the ways in which people can be classified, though it should be our choices which define who we are. Wizards have their own minority in the Muggle-borns, who are pressed for a background they can't control. Just as you are born black, you are born Muggle-born. It's in your DNA. Calling someone a mudblood is synonymous with calling someone the N-word. A world in which people are judged based on what they are instead of what they do sadly continues for Muggles and wizards alike. The next parallel lies in the use of social media to harm others. People are torn apart on Twitter, their careers delayed, or even destroyed when someone tells a story about them. Even if the story is disproven, reputations remain damaged. Muggles also hurt others with their use of gossip magazines. When an unfavorable story comes out about someone, it's not uncommon for them to be bombarded with hate on Twitter. For witches and wizards, being torn apart by the infamous Rita Skeeter can mean being surrounded by owls carrying hate mail. The Daily Prophet's use of media to portray people a certain way hurts Harry in his 5th year. When he's labeled as delusional, many of his classmates turn on him. The final similarity between Muggles and Wizards comes from both groups participating in activism, whether that be through protests or the written word. In the magic world, Black people are marching for equal rights, and there are countless books penned by minority authors who are looking to share their stories. One of the most oppressed groups in the wizarding world are the squibs. Squibs are non-magical people born to magic parents. As a result of their lack of power, they remain on the fringes of wizarding society. Many of them are even sent away, expected to live apart from their families. Further digging into Harry Potter lore reveals a squib character who pens a book on his plight as a squib in order to spread awareness around the issue. Whether it be our passion for sports or our shared difficulty in challenging discrimination, Muggles and Wizards are more alike than not. Instead of looking at each other as Muggle or Wizard, we can just look at each other as human. What similarities have you noticed between Muggles and Wizards? Have any of the parallels surprised you? Let me know. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe.